discussion on the business case for the decarbonization in Pakistan. I'm your today's moderator, Saliha Qureshi, and I'm currently leading a center on industrial decarbonization at STPI. So before we proceed further, I wanted to welcome and thanks to our panelists. So we have been joined by Mr. Farooq Ahmed, who is the Deputy General Manager, ESG, Pakistan State Oil. We have been joined by Mr. Hamad Bashir, former NTE Private Financing Advisor Network and Associate Director Policy and Strategy, Sky Bridges Energy. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Dr. Hina Aslam, she's a visiting researcher at STPI, and retired Honorable Benjamin James Matthew Williamson, Chief Executive Officer, Stalbeck Limited. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Ms. Marian Tan, Associate Director, Policy and Strategy, South Pole. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us, and I hope I pronounce your name perfect. And also Ms. Anab Mahmood, she's the industrial decarbonization expert. Thank you. And also Shakib Alai Saab, who is the advisor at STP, senior advisor at STPI. Thank you all for joining us. And before we further start the discussion and, to figure out and to explore the opportunities for the business case for the decarbonization in Pakistan, I would like to, set some housekeeping rules for that. The session right now we are doing is, we have joined by industrial experts and also, expert who have a grip on the decarbonization and industries as well. So the session is being recorded and streamed live on STPI socials platforms. And I would request for the online speakers that please ensure that your microphones are muted when you're not speaking, and when it is your turn to speak, kindly turn on both your video and audio, provided your network allows it. And this discussion is, comprised of 2 rounds, followed by a question and answer session. And we also encourage the online and in-person participants to, fill in the chat box. And after the, discussion, we will ask these questions to our experts for the further, exploration of these opportunities for decarbonization. But before I officially, start a panel discussion, I would request for the opening remarks to our research fellow, Dr. Khalid Waleed, on the business case of decarbonization. Yes, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Saliha. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this very solution-oriented, I would say, seminar. When I say solution-oriented, it is actually solution-oriented because Pakistan right now facing, I always say, this 3E crisis, that is economy, energy, and environment. Our economy is in turmoil on account of 3 very fundamental flaws. First is low industrial growth. We are stuck in this vicious cycle of, I would not say poverty, but vicious cycle of low productivity, which is sort of instilling and becoming a norm in Pakistan's economy. Our economy is service-based rather being the manufacture sector-based. So we need to figure that out. Trade deficit, although it is contracting by now, but still it is huge. We need to increase exports. Second crisis, that is the energy sector crisis. It's crisis of affordability, it's crisis of sustainability. And now again, because of the affordability and sustainability crisis, it is now again becoming the accessibility crisis, which we faced in 2007, 2008 till 2015 in the form of load shedding. It is not about that capacity is not there. Electricity capacity is there, but due to affordability concerns, due to sustainability concerns, it is likely to be again the accessibility crisis. Although electricity is available, but it is not affordable anymore, it is not reliable anymore, and it is not sustainable anymore. On third side, the environmental side, we all know that Pakistan ranks among top 10 most vulnerable countries to climate change. We had these disastrous floods in 2022, which caused about 30 billion USD loss and damage in Pakistan. just to give you the scale of this, a magnitude of this, 30 billion USD is a huge amount for Pakistan. Like in that year, 2022, the total GDP of Pakistan was around 300 billion USDs, and the saving rate for that year was 10%, 11%, I guess. So the 30% is the total saving that Pakistan had for that year. So one flood that wiped away the total savings. So there exists an economic case, there exists a business case in terms of investing in sustainability. I will, in terms of introductory remarks, I will put forth these two approaches if we want to uh, make it a business case for Pakistan's industry. First approach is the stick approach. Second is the carrot approach. The stick approach includes EU's CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Stick approach also includes uh, ever rising cost of electricity, of energy in Pakistan, because we are import dependent country. So if we want to make our industry sustainable, if we want to have manufacturing industry bloom in Pakistan, if we want to have more share of GDP coming from industrial or productive sector, we need to sort of uh, take into account these stick approaches, particularly the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Because of the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, uh, our textile exports would be drastically impacted, as reported by Turkey's case. I had the chance to review the BTRs, the biannual transparency reports of Turkey, submitted to UNFCCC. According to those BTRs, the Turkey is about to lose around 9% of their cement export, because cement was in those six sectors currently which the CBAM applies, and around 10% of their iron and steel exports to EU. So by 2030, when the CBAM initiative would be implemented on all the sectors, Pakistan's textile industry, which is currently facing very huge input cost in terms of higher tariff, in terms of increasing cost of capital. So we need to be aware of that as well. That stick approach will affect our textile exports. So if you see the Pakistan's national grid, you will see that there is a index known as CBAM Exposure Index, developed by World Bank. If you compare Pakistan with EU, you will see that Pakistan's national grid is 1.4 times more carbon intensive as compared to European Union's grid. So if the industry is taking electricity from the grid and manufacturing textile, we would be exposed to these CBAM fees, which would obviously uh, impact our exports, and our export will get less competitive if we see the peer countries. Those are heavily investing in renewable energy, particularly for their industries, that is Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, even Bangladesh as well. So we need to take account of these stick sort of measures as well. Let me come towards the carrot approaches. These carrot approaches include carbon markets. These carrot approaches you recently agreed upon, recently negotiated Article 6.2 agenda in COP29, that is transfer of internationally, what is the word?
Mitigation.
No, internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, the
Outcomes.
ITMOs, which means that NDCs would be a tradable commodity, which means that if Pakistan have the surplus of NDCs in their targets, they can sort of trade to countries like Middle Eastern countries, where the achievement of NDCs is becoming an uphill task. So these are some of the carrot approaches. We can use carbon markets. The industries can use carbon markets, and they can sell their credits, just like in the case of Delta Blue Carbon. Pakistan attracted a good price of carbon market, but still we need to sort of have an equitable carbon market as well. So if I just sum up, what we need to discuss here is, and I am looking forward to listen to the experts, that how Pakistani businessmen, how Pakistani industrialists, they can see these sustainability practices, these initiatives uh, as a bankable project, as a bankable plan for their industries to expand. Because Pakistan's, again, I would say Pakistan's North Star would be having a productive economy, having a high level of industrial growth. But to achieve high level of industrial growth, it would not be possible if we are not integrating sustainability into the equation. If we want to have a robust, long-lasting, sustainable macroeconomic growth, we need to sort of not only provide incentives to our industries. Those are market-based incentives, not the distortive ones in terms of economic subsidies, in terms of tax exemptions. But again, we need to sort of provide this conducive environment where they can invest in the sustainability practices. Uh, Lastly, the circular economy would be very important. Circular economy in terms of bringing more inputs in a sustainable, environmental friendly way back to the industries so that they can have this production cycle even more reliable and sustainable. With this, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to very solution-oriented discussion and learning, particularly from international experts, linking it with international best practices that the industry there follows, and linking it with Pakistan's own context, because we have seen very, very drastic and adverse consequences of replicating international best practices without knowing the Pakistan's own context. With this, I always say that STPI, what we do is we have this information diffusion in such a way that international best practices, they are being diffused in such a way that that we can implement them in Pakistan's context. With that, we can make this business case for Pakistani industries, Pakistan's productive economy. Looking forward to an insightful discussion. Back to you, Saleh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalid, and very rightly said that we are here to explore the bankable projects through carrot and stick approaches, especially through EU, CBAM, BTRs, ITMOs. So we are looking for more, avenues. So that's why we started this journey in 2024 with the program on industrial decarbonization, where we were able to highlight the challenges that hard to abate industries must have, and how we can make a strong business case for them, that they can actually adopt the practices, the opportunities that could enhance their competitiveness in global market, as well as they are more their businesses are more sustainable in that way. So for this, we are now about to start the panel discussion, and as you know that for this discussion we are exploring the debate around three main objectives, that how to assess the financial implications that adopt decarbonization strategies for businesses in Pakistan, like potential cost-saving investment opportunities, effective risk management strategies for the low-carbon operations, and also we are exploring that for what we can take from this to the COP30 for the decarbonization pathway for industrial sector, and identify the strategies that can enhance the sector's competitiveness and sustainability, and also to develop a comprehensive understanding of the economic and environmental implications for CBAM on Pakistan industrial sector. Yeah, so with this, I think we have been joined by Mr. Farooq Ahmed, who is the Deputy General Manager, ESG, Pakistan State Oil. Farooq Sahab, we have been working with you since past 1 year, when we had extensive study on the decarbonization of the cement sector, and also you have expertise in the ESG oil, Pakistan State Oil. So how do you see that that how the industry is taking these challenges to decarbonize, in particular energy intensive and heavily, fossil fuel relied sectors, and also how you can see that its significance that industries needed for the business case for decarbonization, considering the industries have financial, operationals, and regulatory hurdles to encounter. Yeah, over to you.
So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this roundtable conference. And I'm glad that I've been associated with SDPI for more than 2 years now, because the work on decarbonization of cement had started much earlier, and we had multiple rounds of interviews. We had a lot of exchange of ideas and data. And then when that paper was published, a lot of good things came out of it. So I'm happy that the decarbonization journey has not been stopped. It's going, and it's growing. So as far as PSO is concerned, many people see PSO as just the next fuel pump where you go and refuel your car and go home. But we have a bigger role than that. We have more than 50% of the country's fuel storage. We are providing fuel to all over the country. Our aviation depends on it. Defense requirements are met by PSO. So basically, PSO is kind of driving the country. And we have seen throughout this whole last few years where there have been a lot of civil unrest in the country. So the supply chains in the fuel have not been stopped, or to the large extent. So we see ourselves in a different role than perceived by the masses. So coming to the question of decarbonization, we don't see this as a stumbling block. We see this as an opportunity for us to adapt and to become more efficient and be ready for tomorrow. So in this sense, PSO has started this energy efficiency program. I think that has been started in 2020. The recent addition to this decarbonization push is the establishment of the Environmental, Social and Governance Department, which I am leading right now. And we have a team who are looking into the energy efficiency, the decarbonization, calculation of our carbon footprints. So we are fully into it, and PSO being the market leader and a state-owned enterprise, we have a huge responsibility. So we are taking the lead, and we will show that in time that we have a good strategy and a good implementation plan where we will move towards cleaner fuel production. You have seen that a few years back in Pakistan, the fuel quality was under 90 RON, and now it is plus 90, and even we have 95 up to 98 RONs of petrol available in the market. Then we are focusing heavily on the energy efficiency because there are a lot of leakages. There are old systems in Pakistan where a lot of energy is wasted. So by means of energy efficiency, we are trying to reduce our carbon footprint. Then we are going for renewable energy integration. PSO has recently launched a renewable energy company by the name of PSO Renewables. And also we are going for electrification of through solar power at different locations, installations, storage houses. You might have seen the PSO EV chargers in Islamabad and other major cities as well. So that is a push towards the electrification of our transport fleet in the country. And since we have a huge infrastructure already available, so if PSO can go forward with it with the government support, I think we don't need to build a lot of new infrastructure. So that is again on the efficiency part. Then we are also looking into alternative fuels like hydrogen fuel cells, if that technology is going to evolve and then be safe enough for public use. I think we are fully into it. Supply chain optimization is another concern and another focus area. And like Dr. Saab said, circular economy initiatives, we are looking for partnerships and exploring opportunities where we can go for circular economy initiatives and carbon offsetting. Another first that PSO did was the launch of PSO fuel cards. So in fuel cards, we have a lot of potential to grow in further for digital transformation and inclusion of the masses who may not have access to conventional banking system and financial systems. including the women and the elderly. And then, like today, I am here with SDPI, and we are discussing decarbonization, looking for potential collaborations and policy adequacy initiatives. So these are the focus areas for PSO right now. And since this is a new topic, you know that the SECP had launched the ESG guidelines, the revised ones, only in 2024. So this is a very nascent stage of ESG in Pakistan, but I'm glad that the government has started to think over it. Companies have already started ESG reporting, and in the near future, you will see a lot of events, which would be more than like currently we are more focused on awareness and capacity building. We are actually planning to start implementation and ESG rollout so that taking our lead, other companies can also adapt and see that this is not just an investment. This is the future of Pakistan and the world as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Farooq Saab, for highlighting the PSO's role, especially related to energy efficiency and decarbonization. And also, it's where we are. It's very, good that ESG guidelines have been announced by the SECP. So, there is a lot of sensitization and debate around the decarbonization. So that's a good point that we are here to start with, and we will come again with some more, thoughtful, provoking questions with you as well. So now moving forward, I would go towards Mr. Hamad Bashir, a former NTE Private Financing Advisor Network and Associate Director, Policy and Strategy. Sir, given the industries, especially hard to abate industries have different challenges to decarbonize, and how do you see the challenges, the current challenges of Pakistani industries in that perspective, and how do you see that how we can make the environment conducive for the stakeholders to mobilize financing towards, to making the agenda of decarbonization more efficient? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Is it fine?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Many congratulations to STPI for arranging this webinar, and also a very interesting topic, that is the business case of industrial decarbonization. This is something that is the need of the hour, that the industrial decarbonization should not be done just for the purpose of greenwashing or something. There should be a business case of it. So I must salute your efforts in this regard, your efforts that are doing in the terms of research and development in this area and related facets. That is truly remarkable. Now, coming to the topic and the specific question that you posed to me, that is the challenges. If you look at the industrial scenario of Pakistan, since in my introduction that you described, that I was associated with the PFAN project, Private Financing Advisory Network, that was a project of UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organizations, primarily working in the area of clean energy, environment, and related facets. And there, since organization itself is working for industrial development, and one of the key focus area of my organization was climate change, environment, and the associated issues related with industries. So when we talk of decarbonization, and when we see this particular Pakistani industry, the Pakistani industry is facing lots of problems that you all are well aware of that. So when we go to any industry, when we go to any small industry, medium-sized industry, large industry for that matter, we always hear lots of problems, lots of issues which are related to the legislation, which are related to the labor, which are related to the foreign currency exchange, which are related to exports, which are related to imports. So, and when we talk of decarbonization, initially, their reply would be the same, like, oh, there are lots of other problems, and now we go for decarbonization. So compelling industries, and what are the challenges in this regard, is first thing is to compel the industries to go for decarbonization. Now, first question would be, and most important question which any industry would be asking, is that why should we go for decarbonization? In your introduction, as you mentioned, that you have to have a stick approach, that maybe the export-oriented industries, they might go for decarbonization because those organizations and countries who are importing from these industries, they have a strict requirement that the industry needs to have this much guideline regarding industrial decarbonization, and regarding carbon emission, regarding green supply chain, etc., etc. So that is one approach. The other approach could be that industries itself in Pakistan, the industries are matter, and not only in Pakistan, in many countries of the world, they are not uh, very conscious of environmental issues as such, unless there is a strict compulsion. Because as mentioned, that there are lots of other problems which industries are facing. Now, how would we go for industrial decarbonization efforts, and what are the different success stories like what we did in our role in the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and for that matter, other international organizations that they are doing, is that we need to develop some particular case studies related to industrial decarbonization with a factor of VGF, which is viability gap funding. For example, any industry, ABC industry, if they are going to, or if you compel them, or ask them, or request them to go for decarbonization related effort, that effort must be could be capital intensive or might require some uh, huge investment or even marine investment. In these circumstances, when industries are facing huge problems, they would not go for extra investment. If they go for extra investment for decarbonization, their cost of production would increase. If the cost of production would increase, they would not, their product would not be competitive, would not remain price competitive. So it's a huge issue. Now, how would we ensure industry that, how does the VGF work? And that we have experienced that in Pakistan also, and UNIDO and other international organizations have done in other many developing countries, that the viability gap funding, like if any product, any activity related to decarbonization or renewable energy or carbon friendly technologies need to be adopted in industry, then when it costs, say for the sake of example, $1 million. So VGF is that viability gap funding. In order to make that viable, there should be partial funding from some international agency, and there should be the rest of the funding, and that funding from the industry should be up to the level that their cost of production would not drastically increase. That is one of the one of the methodologies that we used in our project when we were working with industries related to solarization at that time when solar was not financially viable, and that thing worked to much extent. Or maybe some other cases, some other type of making a business case industrial decarbonization could be that the interest rate is very high, so if they manage to get their some interest, and a third party, an international organization or international donor would pay the interest or partially interest, or make that by making that investment uh, easy investment or interest-free investment. That is one of the reasons that one of the uh, methods that we can compel the industries to go for decarbonization. Just like we did in the case of solarization for small industries project, that solar panels were and solar water pumps were given to industries and some small businesses, and on interest-free loans, then and the cost of the interest was sponsored by third parties. So this is something that could be achieved, like partial sponsorship, VGF, another thing. Coming to the other topic that you mentioned in your invitation letter as well as in your introduction, that is CBAM. CBAM is also something that would, though if this CBAM is not currently applicable on all type of industries, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is only specifically targeting few industrial sectors. And many of the industrial sectors, if you see in Pakistan, those industrial sectors do not have huge exports. So at this moment, they might not be affecting many export-oriented industries. I don't, if anybody from STPI would like to correct me on that. Uh, but maybe this is the first stage of CBM. Maybe at the later stage, a CBM could be applicable on all industries, or if not all industries, many other industries, then this would be a huge issue. So this would be again compulsion for industries, export to industries, so go for decarbonization and related efforts. So for that matter, again, just like I mentioned, that there should be certain VGF or co-financing or financing option available on to for industries to compel them to go for the decarbonization related efforts. So that is from my side. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you, Hamad Sab, for highlighting that the avenue for the industries for VGF funding and also the CBAM is an opportunity for the decarbonization initiatives would be in Pakistan. So we will come to you later on the more highlights from the industrial sector as well. So moving forward, now I would request retired Honorable Benjamin James Matthew. As highlighted by the panelist from the Pakistan perspective on the decarbonization of challenges in Pakistan, particularly when there is a challenge that is on the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions within the framework of viable business case, especially when we are talking about the scope 1 emissions, which are the direct emissions. It's on the its impact on the re-engineering of energy intensive process like steel, sorry, cement in Pakistan, and also scope 2, which hindered by upfront cost and regulatory barriers, and scope 3 emissions, which needs a redesigning of logistics and sources strategies. So how do you see these interconnected challenges are underscore the need for industries to strategically align sustainability goals with financial viability, stakeholder expectations, and market competitiveness? Yeah, over to you.
Hello, good, well, I suppose it's good afternoon, everybody there. Thank you for inviting me. It's 22:11 here in Denmark right now, and cold and wet. I hope it's warm and dry where you guys are. Yes, I have a number of slides I wanted to show just to go through this. Is it an option that I share my screen?
Yeah, you can.
Excellent. Right, I'll share screen too, and I'll do this. So I wanted to just quickly start by talking about how business is approaching this in Europe at the moment. I'm hoping that you can see my mouse. Right now I'm highlighting scope 1, the direct emissions. Now I'm sure everybody here is intimately aware of the different categories and how one calculates scope 1, 2, and 3. But from a business point of view, I think it needs to be highlighted where things actually are in reality. In the UK right now, BMW is one of the leading car manufacturers in the United Kingdom, and they presented their goals for scope 1 this year in Oxford. So when it comes to where business really is globally and how that differs from where legislation is, and my colleague mentioned earlier this talk about the carrot and the stick, the push towards major industry to actually move from a scope 1 environment to a scope 2 environment is a very, very slow and laborious process. So just to highlight where we are globally in terms of the achievements that have been made in business on an international scale and the requirements necessary. My colleague talked about VGF earlier and how that needs to bridge the gap between the reality of where we are in business and what it's actually going to cost to do this transition. So I thought I'd just kind of go through that slowly. So that was my first slide. And then I just wanted to break it down into a little bit more detail so it's easier for people to understand the kinds of things, the kinds of questions that businesses are reluctant to answer, because answering those questions costs them money. It's easy to explain to a business that they need to take responsibility for their initial exposure, but as you move forward in the system, deeper and more detailed questions start to be asked when it comes to your upstream supply and your downstream supply. How this is approached from a business perspective is extremely challenging, and it's I'm thinking that the approach might be a balance between both incentive and legislative drive. How we find that balance, I think, is the challenge here. And I think the keynote speaker mentioned that at the start. So as we kind of move forward, it's slightly more simple to actually break this down into the different categories so you can see how a business would actually approach these different characteristics from a compliant point of view. And if you remember my initial comment about Rover, I didn't want to contact Rover and ask them if I could provide those details because I think that would be crossing too many barriers. But what I was able to find similar to what I saw at Rover is a manufacturing company in Japan called Murat, who have actually published their Scope 3 calculations. And you can see from the breakdown of their upstream and downstream categorizations and their initial Scope 1 calculations how little of their overall impact is in their Scope 1. So there's a massive potential here for growth. And I just wanted to make it clear that although it may seem from a disaster recovery point of view that Pakistan is far behind the rest of the world, I think the reality is a little bit more optimistic than that. So I just wanted to come to where I think this has value for my business and for the businesses that I'm supporting, and that is the balance between sustainability and decarbonization. If you look at these characteristics, and these slides will be available to everybody afterwards, there's a big role to be played in capacity building and education and on the ground support for getting these ideas across, because it really needs to be multi-level, the inclusion of understanding and the necessary move from a non-sustainable business model to a sustainable business model. But if you look at this slide, which you can all explore in detail later, sustainability and decarbonization unify in agriculture. Agriculture has also already massive data sets across all of the different categories for both upstream and downstream calculation of all of the products and all of the production, because it's been a necessary requirement, certainly in Europe, for the past 120 years that data is provided for all of these different categorizations. If we can put all of that data into a system that provides a clear and concise overview across all sectors, then the difference between an upstream audit and a downstream audit could be managed centrally by a government body and qualified in such a way where offsetting and insetting can be balanced with the overall maximization of both sustainability and decarbonization being the central force in all of that. So from my point of view, and I think from the point of view of Pakistan, I think there's a real opportunity here to become a leading voice in the global move towards decarbonization and net zero by demonstrating that if you get the infrastructure correct and you can provide the education and the capacity building across the entire platform, then there's a real opportunity to accelerate Pakistan's development to being one of a leading role rather than a passive role. So that is my little speech, and I hope if anybody has questions, you are more than welcome to ask me questions later on. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Right and Honorable Benjamin James, for perfectly explaining the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions and their role in the decarbonization. And also there is an interlinked and interconnectedness between the sustainability and decarbonization agenda when, in Pakistan, when we're talking about the sustainability initiatives. So there is a common, ground on that for the innovative technologies and cross-sector collaboration, investment in green infrastructure as well. We will come to you later on exploring more avenues for the Pakistan's perspective as well. So moving forward, now I would, request Miss Marine Tan from the South Pole, so, that, as most of the speakers have highlighted the challenges, especially the developing countries have in terms of limited fiscal space, fluctuating energy prices, and high borrowing cost, which restricts the government and industries from investing in clean technologies and infrastructure, as highlighted by Benjamin as well. So, moreover, to access the global climate finance mechanisms, there is a lot of complication in application processes which lack the technical capacity and insufficient policy. So, how do you see what are the financial tools that are needed for the developing countries context for the decarbonization of industries or decarbonization of the whole sector, especially when we are talking about the business case for that? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Saliha, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marianne, the Associate Director for the Asia Center of Carbon Excellence at South Pole. And many thanks to SDPI for your kind invitation to today's roundtable. So at South Pole, the carrot and stick approach was talked about earlier, and we do both, essentially. First, we advise our clients on navigating the sticks in the ecosystem while leveraging the carrots. What I mean by the latter is that we use carbon markets to unlock decarbonization pathways. So South Pole is an end-to-end carbon asset developer sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So we're an end-to-end carbon asset developer supporting corporations, governments, and public sector organizations in implementing climate solutions by designing, developing, and managing high-quality carbon assets worldwide. In our 18 years, we have supported over 1,000 companies on their decarbonization journeys, enabled over 800 climate action projects, and to date, abated over 200 million metric tons of CO2 through climate action credits. So increasingly, we are looking to develop carbon assets in hard-to-abate sectors such as cement, steel, and coal, leveraging carbon markets. And like the earlier speakers have talked about, there are quite a lot of challenges. But why do we see that carbon markets are one of the key answers to unlocking these decarbonization pathways? Is that because it makes sense to decarbonize only if we can achieve a win-win situation for everyone along the value chain. So in the carbon markets, basically what we're doing is that we are arbitrating using assets between places and assets that can be decarbonized competitively and buyers that are willing to pay for decarbonization. And on the supply side, industries can generate carbon credits that can be sold in voluntary or compliance carbon markets through emission reduction projects, while on the demand side, the use of carbon credits to meet regulatory obligations or voluntary sustainability targets can reduce the cost of emissions reduction. So what we do at South Pole is to bring together expertise in 4 key areas to support our clients. And it all starts really with identifying the opportunities for carbon credits use. So this can range from large carbon assets such as the early retirement of coal plants, but also includes other pathways which we can explore at existing plants, such as modifying existing processes to become less emissive. So depending very much on the specific circumstances of the plant, different decarbonization pathways can be more feasible than others. So that's step 1. And increasingly, as we look into industrial decarbonization and first-of-a-kind projects, what we're finding also is that the existing carbon accounting methodologies are not sufficient. So the second thing we do at South Pole is to develop new carbon asset methodologies in order for high quality and high integrity carbon credits to be generated. The third thing, which is quite important, is policy expertise, because whether it's from the UN or from ICAO or from CBAM even, or domestic compliance markets. Regulations are evolving, and this is the expertise that we bring to advise our clients, both in the private as well as public sector, on how we can tap on emerging markets and navigate the situation. And finally, a point that was touched on earlier as well, is how then do we mobilize climate finance to commercialize carbon asset development, including instruments such as VGF. So now I will share two initiatives that we are working on in order to set the stage for implementing more carbon decarbonization projects. The first is the Rockefeller Coal to Clean initiative, which is an excellent example of how we have been working with the coal sector to decarbonize, because today over 90% of coal plants are regulated or under long-term contracts that actually make it very challenging to retire them early. So in response, we are working with CCCI to design a methodology that can be used to accelerate the managed and equitable phase out of coal plants. So through this initiative, the revenue from selling the CCCI's coal to clean credits can provide an incentive for the coal plant owners to change course and invest in renewable energy instead, while also generating the funding to support the transition of workers and communities away from coal-fired power. So today we have identified a pilot project to expedite the decommissioning of a 246 megawatt coal-fired power plant under the South Luzon Thermal Energy Corporation in the Philippines. And by 2030, the initiative aims to retire 60 coal plants globally. So we are on the lookout for more opportunities to work with coal plant owners to generate transition credits. The second is actually at the end of the value chain, because at the end of the day, we all need to look for buyers for these credits. So this initiative is called NextGen, which is a collaboration we have with Mitsubishi Corporation, which brings together leading multinational buyers from across Asia, Europe, and North America to promote the market for high-quality certified carbon removals from technological projects. Our founding buyers include companies like Boston Consulting Group, Mitsui OSK, and UBS. And the reason why we established NextGen was because we saw that the lack of support for innovative carbon removal technologies and projects will impact their scale-up of CDRs by 2030, and establishing a new credible market to compensate for removing CO2 from the atmosphere was necessary for the world to meet the net zero emissions. So these are two initiatives that we have embarked on, in addition to all the carbon asset development work that we do, to show and illustrate how we are working in progressing carbon asset development for industry, building on our 18 years of experience in mobilizing carbon markets. And we believe that it's not an easy journey by any means, but with the right approach, we can achieve decarbonization with both environmental as well as economic success.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Yes, very rightly highlighted that we need a tailored and right approach in the context of the country, especially when we are talking about the VGF and also the carbon markets for the business case of decarbonization. And now I think there is an international perspective, and also we have highlighted some challenges on the local perspective. Now moving forward to Dr. Hina Aslam, she's the visiting research fellow at STPI. So, ma'am, you have an extensive experience and working on the low carbon, projects and developments. So, how do you see that? Which are the sectors or industries that need to be prioritized first, and also which are benefited for the business case of decarbonization in terms of policies or investments avenue, and which accelerate the growth of the overall country? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Saleha. I hope I'm audible. I'm not echoing. Right.
No.
So thank you so much for the opportunity. Very glad to be part of this really high-level forum where all the panelists have really elaborated on what is actually happening in the space, and not only at the domestic level, but what are the challenges being faced in the industrial decarbonization space all over the world. And if I talk about just Pakistan and the decarbonization, the challenge still remains very global. we cannot deny that it's a transformative challenge, not just for countries like Pakistan, but also for the developing nations, where these hard-to-abate sectors like iron, steel, cement, all of these sectors are facing huge challenges in terms of diverting their transition to low carbon, given the potential of how the economies are developing, how the resource developments are happening. And also, I think most emphasized by many of the panelists here are about some of the sticks and the carrots being offered. And that's where the opportunity comes, where businesses are not just leveraging, not just facing these challenges, but also could leverage the opportunity of some of the carrots that they may harness the potential of decarbonizing themselves. So in terms of Pakistan, as we know, that industrial sector is one of the most major contributor to the emissions, which are not very much major contributor to the global, but in terms of the domestic environmental concerns and the pollution, it plays a major role. In terms of what we see in the hard-to-abate sector, in terms of iron, steel, cement, textile, transport, I think the lowest hanging fruit where all of these industries could really decarbonize, given that we see is the transition towards renewable, which has which comes from a major dilemma of how do we transition from the fossil fuels to the more clean energy sources, and how do we use that to electrify those industries to make their production and to make them competitive in the world in terms of how their products are being produced with lowest or least embedded emissions, which are being transported to the other countries. That's where I'm bringing up to a point where we are saying that we have CBAM from Europe. We have a lot of CBAMs coming, UK, Singapore, Korea, many other countries, Australia, many other countries are exploring their own CBAMs, which means that there are strict regulations and mandatory regulations and disclosures coming up, driving all these decarbonization efforts. So companies have to mobilize towards how they can decarbonize themselves to be able to comply to those regulatory policies and stay competitive in the world. And that's where the government comes in, and how these governments are making these efforts to support their own industries. So if I talk about, let's say, sitting in Australia, where the major economy is based on iron and steel and many other mineral resources, what we are seeing from the government is actually the policies and the frameworks to help industries regulate or to comply with these policies, and help them have an access to their financing, to the green premiums, to the concessional financing mechanisms, and how these policies are actually so inclusive that all the industry voices, all the evidence that have been produced, or the efforts that have been done by the industry are really marked into those policies. And all of these stakeholders, given different challenges and given different priorities, are taken into consideration to develop such kind of schemes to help them navigate this global situation. When I talk about why it is required, and if I look at the title of this webinar, as it says, is in terms of the business case. So if I give you some numbers from the global perspective, it has been recognized that failure to decarbonize could risk up to around 20% in the economic profit for companies by 2030. And that's all based on the increasing cost of the capital or the loss of the market share, also including the stranded assets. So in any case, decarbonization is a difficult transformation for most companies around the globe, not just in Pakistan. It includes not only the cost of the scaling the technologies which are required, but also how we build new capabilities. There is also very high. I've talked about access to financing, which is a biggest challenge, especially in the times of where Pakistan stands at this point, where we need to find strategies. And some of my fellow panelists have really elaborated on what could be the best possible ways to harness such co-financing models or some other incentive-based investments portfolios or some other incentivized programs to make things work. In terms of when we say the companies trying to align their sustainability priorities with it, so a global push in terms of climate reporting and disclosures, where most of the voluntary schemes are becoming mandatory, also drives this kind of a motivation and also an effort for the companies to drive these decarbonization efforts through the supply chains. Be rewiring from the fossil fuels to the clean energy, or leading or energy efficiency, or looking at the major shifts in the viability of their current assets. So yes, in the current moment where we see that there are added complexity of the inflation, there's a disruption of the market, there are supply shortages, there are increased interest rate of all these economic situations, we do see that to survive and ideally to create value, all of the companies will need to think that their decarbonization strategy have to keep up with this shifting landscape of regulations and market opportunities and policies driving their geographical footprint and to be able to make the decisions that is required. And all of this applies for Pakistan as well, where the companies have to stay competitive in this global world, have to make some really hard decisions on how they can really market themselves with a low carbon production region or production capacity that they have to be more competitive with the countries which are having those CBAMs. So it's all about how to harness the opportunities which are there, which of course is difficult, but there are strategies where the companies and that are quick to this transition or offerings can leverage the inherent supply-demand gaps in the markets, let's say, or they can enter the new financing pools where the new businesses or the companies, industries who have these capacity and capabilities can actually secure more access and more offerings to these kind of opportunities. So same goes for Pakistan. I know that textile industry in Pakistan has been doing a lot of good work in Pakistan in terms of navigating this complex supply chain, being the major exporter to the world. But if you look at the cement side and the steel production side, we also see that there is an opportunity, but given that they have the capacity and they have the right resources to be able to transition towards decarbonization or low carbon transition pathway. So my emphasis is on, yes, the technology perhaps should be there, but the adoption of technologies is one of the challenge. The second thing is the biggest challenge that we are seeing for the industry and the bigger driver is actually the evolving regulations and the policies around the production of these materials across the globe and making the space more competitive. And given that we are in an economic situation where the industries have to grow themselves and bring out Pakistan out of this crisis, I think it creates a huge responsibility on our industrial partners to see how we can all work towards it together. So that are my few interventions. I didn't want to repeat whatever has been said by my other colleagues, but I think I'm sure like it has added a bit of extra knowledge to the audience. And feel free to reach out whenever you have another question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hina. Yes, very rightly, you mentioned about the, incentive-based portfolio for the industries and companies in Pakistan. And also there is a, we started this dialogue to sensitize, the industries and key stakeholders to make this, debate inclusive, in which the stakeholders, the ministries and the industries, they could, debate on such topics and make an economic or business case, especially when we are tackling with the climate change and all that scenarios. So we need a business case for the decarbonization. And we also there is also a concern showed by the one of the panelists that industries ask why we need decarbonization. So there is a need to sensitize and aware industries on that perspective as well. So moving forward and to highlight some more perspective on industries from the Pakistani side, we have Miss Anab Mahmood with us. Ms. Anab, you have listened to all the speakers. They have highlighted the Pakistan industry's challenges, especially energy intensive sectors, and that how they can adapt to the new regulatory frameworks, and how these businesses, when we are talking about the business case, they can ready for the evolving regulatory landscape and maintain their competitiveness in the global market. So how do you see the strategies that could be more adaptable or more conducive to the Pakistani environment as well? Yeah, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure listening to all the amazing panelists, and they really added on to our mutual understanding of the current crisis and the challenge that we face against the climate change. So as far the business case for decarbonization is concerned, I think it's just in the interest of it, I'll take this opportunity to begin with the total losses that Pakistan has incurred over the past 2 decades, minus the losses from the floods back in 2022. So $29 billion of economic losses was incurred by livestock, agriculture, exports, and trading. This sector only between 92 and 21. And another economic loss of $15 billion by the floods of 2022. So what we're actually looking here is that Pakistan, despite its political and economic crisis, this situation is further, pushing it down the development spiral. So looking at that, it's really essential for the businesses to remain competitive in the international markets, where compliance is really super important to avoid the penalties by EU. And so, as rightly brought up earlier, we have a couple of international regulatory bodies that are essential for Pakistan's export companies to comply with, and CBAM, which is going to mature in 2026. So until then, we have like a year's time to, for training and for the industries to learn, and which I want to talk about later, about the talent and capacity building that we have overall in the market for the decarbonization in terms of carbon accounting and all those areas. So CBAM, EFRAG, ESRM. So these are some of the major international regulatory bodies that would require compliance from Pakistan's industrial sector in order to remain competitive internationally. And also SECP is set to, introduce a regulatory framework in the coming years for the industries to comply with. So in order to remain sustainable in the longer term, there is no way for the countries, for the industries and businesses to not to divest from their business as usual practices. So, these are some of the important reasons the carbonization is such an important factor for the businesses to account for. In addition to that, so what and how is it going to be done? So what do we actually need to begin with? So it's not just a public responsibility. We see a lot of private investors and private, we venture capitalists coming up in the interest, of encouraging and promoting decarbonization across Pakistan. So, but for the biggest challenge to implementation is the financing, and the financing cannot be done on its own, and the financing needs a specific kind of ecosystem that has to be supported by the government, by the public, and that ecosystem includes, uh, first of all, switching from voluntary carbon markets to carbon trading systems and markets here in Pakistan. We need to have our own markets. For example, NDC estimated about $350 billion of financing required to implement decarbonization completely, as per the Race to Zero initiative by 2050, whereas the GDP size of Pakistan is, equivalent to $350 billion. So where is that funding going to come from? We need to mobilize local businesses and public-private partnerships for that. And more than that, there are so many, financial tools available in the name of impact investments, catalytic investments, bioregional financing, asset management. So those of you are already aware of the net zero asset managers. So that is the only global initiative worth 57.8 trillion USD with 325 signatories. And that's the only global asset management initiative to mobilize funds in order to combat and the carbon emissions and reach the target of zero carbon emissions by 2050. And we need to recognize the fact that there is an increasing interest of investment, international investments in global South. So Pakistan being, the less than 1% emitter of
Yeah, I think Ms. Hanab is not. So
Sorry, we can't hear anybody.
Yeah, we just now we just ended the the panel discussion, and now we have here at STPI with us some industrial experts who have like keen observer and very good working with the industry, especially textile, on the circular economy as well. So we are now opening the question and answer session for the experts. So yeah, if anyone has any question, please.
Yes, please. Okay.
Thank you so much for the insightful discussion. And my question is from the South Pole. They have rightly mentioned the role of clean credit initiatives. So my question is, can they please explain how it links to the case of Pakistan, where there is a very young coal fleet, and also do their mechanisms also apply to industrial sectors dominated by coal, such as cement sector in the Pakistan? Thank you so much. Mariana.
Yes, Marian, if you want to respond on that.
Thank you for the question. So the Coal to Clean initiative is one of the major initiatives we have worked on, that we are working on actually, to abate carbon from the coal sector. But it is by no means the only way to abate carbon from the coal sector. Reason being, as you rightly pointed out, not all coal-fired power plants are suitable for early retirement. And this is why also, it's really important to understand the individual circumstance of the asset, to understand what is possible and what is not possible. So in the case of a very young coal-fired power plant, then you need to look at things like how young it is, what's the runway, what are the kind of contracts or regulations that the plant is under, and also then things like what is the renewable energy alternative that can be put in place. Depending on some of these circumstances, then we can make an assessment of whether a power plant is suitable for early retirement or not. And there are other decarbonization pathways that we would explore as well. So to name two that come to mind, first is using carbon capture and storage as a decarbonization measure. That is one possibility. Although the drawback to that, of course, is then you do find yourself sometimes continuing to be locked into the fossil fuel value chain. The other that we have also looked at for different coal-fired power plants is to look at swapping out the feedstock instead of coal to a biomass alternative. So very much depending on what the circumstance is, sometimes early retirement works, sometimes it doesn't. For coal to clean, it just happens that there isn't an existing methodology, which is why everything starts with a methodology to calculate actually from an accounting standpoint, what is the number of carbon credits that would be generated from such a project. So the approach I would take is not so much coal to clean per se, it is one of different approaches that we can take for coal decarbonization.
Yes, thank you so much. If anyone has any question.
Thank you so much. I'm Sadia Sathi, and I'm working around the gender and climate change. So when we talk about the decarbonization, when we look into the Pakistan's example, like women in energy sector, they are like working and taking the positions, whether it's on the technical side or maybe on the leadership positions. As you know, women are already vulnerable due to the climate change. They brand the climate change vulnerabilities. So when we are talking about the sectors like cement and steel, they are already a complex sector, whether it's the involvement of women or whether we are going to phase out the fossil fuels in these sectors. So do we have any examples from the region or global examples where involvement of women in these sectors, and how can Pakistan adopt and develop a comprehensive strategies in this sector to involve the women in a workforce, whether it's a technical position or a leadership position, not only in a labor position? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Sadia. I think Benjamin wants to respond on that. Yeah, please.
Yes, hello. Let me just put my hand down, sorry. Yes, well, that's an interesting question. My wife actually works in the construction industry here in Denmark. She is a construction engineer and is very passionate about cement, funnily enough. And she works for an organization called Hilti, which is originally from Liechtenstein, which is now a leading engineering and manufacturing entity globally. And they specifically have a very, what would you call it, a high intensity focus on inclusion and bringing women into engineering and into construction from a global standpoint. So if anybody is interested in looking at a company who is actually making real change on the ground with those kinds of things, then Hilti International would be an exemplary example of success in that field. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, glad to know that so many hands are raised. So, yeah, I think we can take one more question and then we'll get back to you. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, so please.
So this is Tashamul Haq. I would like to thank all the panelists for their valuable insights during this important seminar. It's been enlightening to hear about the challenges and opportunities as we navigate this important journey. So we are exploring strategies for decarbonization. I'm particularly interested in the role of emerging technologies. So my question is, in the decarbonization drive, what role do we see for technologies such as carbon capture and storage, as well as green hydrogen for green ammonia, in helping developing countries like Pakistan achieve their decarbonization goals? Thank you. Over to the panelists.
Yes, one more question, and then we will ask the experts to respond on that. Yes, Soha, do you have any question? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Soha Nisar from STPI. So, I have a question that can be asked, answered by anyone. Or so a few sectors in Pakistan that are important globally do not have a strong case for decarbonization in Pakistan. For example, for steel sector, there is a strong global push, but Pakistan is a secondary steel producer. So how do we push the sustainability drive in these sectors? Thank you.
Yes, if I see Dr. Basharat has raised his hand. So if he and Farooq Saab, if you want to highlight something related to, I think, the role of women, so please.
Yeah. So to both questions, I have very short answers. For enabling the women in cement sector, I have left Bestway, but the good practices I think I should share with the panel as well. So Bestway Cement had recently started a drive where the induction of female engineers, fresh graduates from the different universities, they were encouraged, and they were given in some cases they were also given grace marks so that they could become part of the workforce at our factories. The head offices, they have a lot of women who are working at the head offices, but at the factories, there was a dearth of women workforce. So Bestway has started it, and I've seen that some other cement companies who were traditionally not employing women at site have now started doing this practice. So all this awareness and capacity building and push from different organizations has worked, and I'm glad that slowly and gradually we will see more women working in the industry sector where conventionally they were not supposed to work, or they were not employed for a lot of different reasons now. So the companies are facilitating them. On the matter of pushing to the companies who do not have any push factor for going for decarbonization, there are only two things which can happen and which will help. The first thing is giving them some kind of a tax break, right? And then the policy, because if the policy envelope is not there, then all of these initiatives or all of this good talk is not going to go into action. And you see that if you talk about the manufacturing industry of Pakistan, they are fighting for their survival due to these worsening costs of energy, which has gone, I think, more than 400% in the past few years. And then the market is also not growing as it was projected a few years back. So they are fighting a survival for their survival. So if they can be given some kind of a support in terms of taxes, and or if this the policy envelope is there, then that push for decarbonization is going to come, and it's going to be easier. The transition is going to be quite easier.
Yes, thank you so much. And if our expert Soha has asked a question on the secondary steel making, so if anyone wanted to respond on that, Dr. Hina, if you wanted to respond on that, in case of Pakistan, the steel sector decarbonization, how do you see the alignment with the business case for that?
And I think it's mostly come from the international drive that mostly people are aware of. So I think many panelists have talked about. So all these industries, whether they are in domestically or internationally, they all have to comply to the regulations and some of the regulatory regimes which are out there. Let's say some of them were mentioned, like in terms of ISSP, IFRS, and many others. When we say that, why they need to do that, let's say in terms of iron and steel sector, the secondary one. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of elaborating their circular economy potential, where there's a huge chance to showcase that how the secondary scrap material or the other circular economy approaches are being utilized in the industry, which are able to demonstrate to the world where the finances or the investments could be mobilized for the promotion of circular economic strategies. So that's one of the things. So I mean, we cannot say that we see it only globally, but all of these domestic or industries are also compliant to many international frameworks out there, and they have a huge drive towards their sustainability as well. And I would like to link back to the gender element, where all these industries also have their sustainability and also what we call as CSR, and under which they are taking many initiatives related to gender or related to sustainability or circular economy, as I think Mr. Farooq has also mentioned in terms of PSO and many others. We do have a good example from the coal power plant in Thar, where the women are being trained. That's one of the example how they are empowering women, and they're driving those dump trucks, and they're also building skills in many other industrial processes or some other fields. Likewise, we also heard an example from the base cement and also many others around the globe. So of course there are opportunities. As far as I see, there still remains a huge gap in terms of when we see as women's participation in decarbonization, and how do we empower initiatives where we actually reduce this gap of empowering women with those skills, equipping them with the necessary skills and information and education that they are really contributing to these efforts, along with the men. So I think these two, and I would also like to shed light on just a very small point on the role of CCS. We have actually STPI has done a really great study on how the CCS can play a role in cement decarbonization, and we have actually a collaborative paper which could be shared by perhaps Ubaid and Soliha, and where there is actually a scenario modeling done for the cement sector of Pakistan, which clearly highlights that the inclusion of CCS is most crucial for such transition in Pakistan. That does require a very strong and long-term planning, because it does require a lot of financing, but it does remain a very viable solution. So when we talk about transition to low carbon cement industry, it does hinge on the coordinated efforts across the sector, across the government, across the international stakeholders, and how to really take this sustained commitment and collaboration to allow the potential benefits for this decarbonization. So I think I just wanted to cover up and bring all these elements into one. I hope it was helpful.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hina. And we really are, excited that we have on this topic, decarbonization, we have two female experts on that. So that's a good, inclusiveness in that debate as well. So we are just, short of time, but we have two more questions. I think first, I am just quickly, if Dr. Basharat wanted to, highlight some points or ask a question from the experts. Yes, over to you, sir. Sir, please,
Yes,
if you
when we, sorry, since you have a shortage of time, since when we talk about gender, we must also mention LGBTQ community as well as, minorities, because just talking about women, I believe is not appropriate. Now, I would come to the subject. Pakistan is one of the top methane emitters globally. We haven't talked about it in this roundtable yet. According to the rankings, Pakistan is the 5th largest emitter of methane, which is 90 times more potent, 90 times more damaging than CO2 and causing the climate change, a greenhouse effect. So, which are the key sectors? The dairy industry, as well as the agriculture, in rice production and waste management, waste industry, waste to energy industry. Methane is produced in landfills where organic matter is decomposed. Then fugitive emissions from gas leaks from oil and gas extraction, transportation, and other processes. Then we have under energy generation, we get a lot of methane generation. And in cement production, steel manufacturing, and chemical industries, they also release a lot of methane, as well as mining industry. So my point is, what are we going to do regarding the methane emissions, since Pakistan is the 5th largest methane emitter in the world, and most of the climate change that is caused in Pakistan, the floods and droughts and heat waves and all that, is due to this emission of methane. It's my short question.
Yes, yes, very rightly said that Pakistan is the seventh most methane emitter, and our latest NDCs might be inclusive in that perspective, that they could address that how methane emission could be tackled through mitigation or adaptation strategies. But right now our focus is on the hard to abate sector, so that's why maybe our next discussion is on that, and that's a good point to highlight. Just taking one more question, and then we will come to the experts, Benjamin and Marian.
Yeah, actually, decarbonization includes methane as well.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sir, we will address these questions in the next round, of course. So I think Benjamin and Marian has raised their hand, so they wanted to highlight something. So then we will come towards the end. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, maybe I should lower my hand. Yeah, so I wanted to just respond to 2 points. First, about CCS and emerging technologies, and the second point on policies. So absolutely, emerging technologies play a very large role in decarbonizing. And I think as we reach for higher and higher hanging fruit, it will become extremely important. I mean, if I think, for example, about the coal to clean initiative, this is actually made possible because the cost of renewables has come down significantly over time. If we were to look at coal to clean, say 20, 30 years ago, certainly the technology exists, but it would not have been at a scale or at a cost that makes it feasible. But today we can do so. And so this is also the role then that I see for emerging technologies. And in fact, one of the newer technologies that we are looking at and studying for cement production is this thing called limestone calcined clay cement, LC3 for short, which can reduce CO2 emissions from cement production by up to 40%. So in technological terms, it's a relatively new technology, but its existence now allows us to look at decarbonization of cement plants in a much more cost-efficient way than it would have been, say, 10 years ago. So firstly, emerging technologies, definitely very important. And then we continue to work with new technologies that have been scaled up and proven to have a track record. The second thing on policies is that in order for us to tap on international markets, it will become increasingly important that the policy guidelines and regulations are clear. And this is important because if governments are able to provide clear policy guidelines that give confidence to the market, then are we able to tap increasingly into international markets, whether it is Article 6 or CORSIA, because that requires actually a fair amount of risk mitigation, not just for today's projects, but also to unlock higher and higher hanging fruit. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Benjamin.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping everybody's still engaging with us. It's been a lot longer than we expected. I just wanted to mention one last thing, also in relation to Article 6, actually, but more from the point of view of gender equality. There's been a few questions and a little bit of interest raised in bringing minorities into the fold, as it were, or into business. And I think it's really important that we remember that the 17 Sustainable Development Goals do include these sorts of challenges and the potential for achieving these kinds of goals and putting these agenda embedded into our strategies. And if we're looking to demonstrate globally that Pakistan can actually achieve some pathway to net zero using carbon as a roadmap to that, then valuing that carbon in terms of the association with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and Goal 5 specifically, I think would be a really powerful way to demonstrate that Pakistan can join the push towards net zero and inclusion in the SDGs. So I think that was all I hadn't mentioned earlier that I wanted to just add. So thank you everybody for that.
Yes, thank you so much. We also would have, we had a discussion on we are now every country has to submit its NDCs in the next coming year. So we have also with us Mr. Muhammad Amjad, who's the Senior Scientific Officer on the Global Change Impact Study Center. So yes, Mr. Amjad, if you wanted to highlight, you are making in the process of NDCs. So how do you see that? Which are the priorities industries that could be part of that industrial sectoral pathway for the NDCs, especially 3.0? If you wanted to highlight something on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this discussion. And while recognizing the expertise of fellow panelists, I hope my contribution also will be meaningful. So we have done few projects in the past regarding the decarbonization efforts towards the of the industrial sector. UNEP Climate Change Center that is in Copenhagen, we have did a project named as Spark 6C. So there we have developed a few project ideas with ministry, with different industries, mainly in the cement sector, in the waste and fertilizer industry. Another where this some project ideas we are already working on towards the. Secondly, we are at Global Change Impact Study Center. We are hosting the carbon registry in the future and looking how we can facilitate the industry in its decarbonization efforts. So I think these are few points which I would like to highlight. And secondly, another challenge would be for us that in our national GHG inventory, we are including only 3 gases, mainly carbon dioxide, methane, which just been pointed out, and nitrous oxide. But for the industrial perspective, if you see, there are a few more gases in the form of short-lived climate pollutants. So when industries will be making their efforts toward decarbonization, and they will also be generating credits through these gases as well. So how we can balance it out, how we can, when we will be transferring these the credits, how will we working out those things, that will be important as well. So these are few discussion points, or I would say a little input from my side as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for highlighting the GCISC role, especially for the carbon registry and also the next part in the NDCs on the industries as well. So at STPI, we had done a study on the carbon capture and usage and storage for the cement sector, cement decarbonization. And I would request my colleague Ubaidur Rahman, who is heading the energy unit at STPI. So he wanted to highlight some points on that. Yeah, over to
Yeah,
you.
thank you. But I'll just take 1 minute before we go to final concluding from Shakib Saab that I mean, yes, definitely. See, there's a lot of debate about the carbon capture and storage, but again, I'll speak a bit on the both sides, both on the positive and negatives. That it's really, I mean, if we look at the commercial scale, we don't really have that technology expediting at a scale that we actually expected few years back. Definitely, the financing is a challenge. I mean, if I look at the IEA report, a couple of years back, there were hardly, I believe, 500 projects across the world that were happening at the commercial scale. So that's, I mean, if you look at the way the technology cost is expected to decrease, that's not really as per. But again, the importance is conveyed from the fact that every net zero scenario that you actually talk about, especially for the cement industry, each net zero scenario modeled by even by STPI, even by IEA or IRENA, that's really does include a substantial portion of emission reduction that needs to come from carbon capture. But personally, from my personal opinion, we do have some other solution that needs to come first before we actually go towards solutions such as carbon capture and storage. Or I believe one of the people also sort of talked about green hydrogen. I mean, electrification needs to happen at the first scale. Dr. Hena very rightly mentioned that the renewable energy integration and addressing the specific challenges that we're facing for Pakistan, particularly around the power wheeling regulations, the use of system charges that can actually address the decarbonization, particularly for the power grid. That are going to be much more important for Pakistan in the short term, and definitely it needs to have a long-term plan that over the years, how do it actually improves the R&D in this sector, and how do we actually go for all if any possibilities are there. And then again, the CCS has to be coupled with any of the financing mechanisms that we have been discussing. So definitely the significance is there, might not be a short-term solution or perhaps even a medium term, but needs to be further explored. So yeah, with this back to you.
Yes, thank you very much. And that was a very, interactive and insightful discussion. And we are hoping that we would have similar dialogues where we can explore further avenues and opportunities for the industries. And we also make sure that we would have more inclusiveness of the industries in the next upcoming dialogues as well. And that's a very good perspective from the international avenue and the local challenges that is highlighted in this dialogue as well. So now we are about to end the discussion, and for the concluding remarks, I would request Senior Advisor SDPI Shakib Ilai Saab. So, if sir, over to you if for the concluding remarks.
Muted.
Sir, you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Saleh and Ubaid, for hosting it. You two do such a good job with the way you plan and do things and organize them very well. Thank you very much to our international and local participants. It was quite enlightening, the fact that we are moving forward with not just awareness and advocacy towards realization and taking bold steps forward into making sure that Pakistan arrives at its targets, that actually things get implemented. There are policies that are taking shape, as well as there are ideas, and we are learning a lot from whatever is happening in the international community in order to bring it to our structures, to adapt it within our framework. And with the new organizations that are coming up in Pakistan that are making so much of an effort, we are all going through the learning curve. So thank you very much on behalf of STPI and myself. Especially, Marianne and you, Benjamin, both of you giving your time out through your Christmas holidays to be with us today and give us time today. Very kind of you. Thank you all. Thank you. Over to you, Saleh. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Shakib Saab, and thank you everyone, Farooq Saab, Ahmad Bashir Saab, Dr. Hina, Benjamin, Marian, and Anab for the very insightful discussion. And from this dialogue, we are making a report, and we will definitely revert back to you for your comments and suggestions on that as well. And we are hoping that we would have similar dialogues in the future as well on the business case, because it's not the ending point, it's the starting point to sensitize the industries and the key stakeholders. So thank you so much, and have a good day, good night as well. Thank you.
Thank you.